those two factors can. Whoa. No, you know what? Honestly, like I've kind of always really enjoyed, like, my always like favorite erotica has always been like burlesque dancing.
Okay.
I love those like old-timey performances. Even for example, live shows that they do these days. Not only like just because, I mean, obviously there's nudity in there, but just the performance of that. Like how many chicks do you know can swing like that from 2 stories, or bungee cords, or throwing chairs up in the air, all that wonderful jazz.
That's a big thing up at the Strip.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think my girlfriend said she wanted to go see Kat Von Dies, whatever her name is, and I think that's up on the Strip.
It's I mean, you have to have a lot of talent for that kind of shit,
Mm-hmm. Well, same thing with those cirque dancers. They're doing some crazy shit.
Twine and twine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, honestly, like that was I had like a little bit of a breakthrough because I remember I ran into, this was a while back. I had a friend that she knew a friend that was a stripper, single mom.
Mm-hmm.
She had 2 kids and she was raising them on her own. And I mean, this lady was an incredible performer. I mean, you could put a fucking pole in the middle of the living room and she could have every single man's eyes, mouths open, just throwing hundreds. And she managed to raise kids on her own and be a performer and talented, like commit to doing this, practically every single day. I was just like, damn, like that's a hard worker right there. I don't know. Ever since then, I've always kind of had a shift perspective of like, it's not just sex work.
Mm-hmm.
These are performers. These are artists. These are really not everybody. I mean, there are a lot of them are really just talented people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I saw a fair share of that, of course, over the years, but you figure out what are you good at, and if you are good at that, particularly, you stay in it and you make as much money as you can.
It always boils down to that, though. It's always about money,
Sure.
and it's hilarious because you think like it's 2025. I mean, we're making money giving people cancer. You'd think at this point, like sex work and all of those things would be legal so that they can have some way that they can have taxation and make money and control this.
Sure. Well,
like, no.
They do it out here, out in Nevada, but not too many other places within the country. Doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's like it's good that it's there because a lot of people wouldn't be able to pay for things and pay taxes and raise kids and have a living if there wasn't such a thing as sex work. It's the truth.
I mean, it's been a part of human culture for thousands of years. I know, like, I sound like a historian every fucking time I'm on this podcast, but like, go to a fucking museum and look at like Roman sculptures and from the Greek period. They had brothel houses. They had performances. Like, sex work was considered a big thing in these cultures. You're like, well, they were sex crazy. Guess what, people? We're human beings. We're all fucking sex crazy. Like, you got a vagina or a penis or dick, whatever they fucking have you. But like, that is a part of human culture.
Mm-hmm.
That is what makes us human.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Like, we wouldn't be here if it, like, right? It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, I think when you have religion putting in the fear of hell in people, that's when things go a little awry.
Yeah. I can talk I was raised Orthodox in the Jewish community. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine how that is for a gay individual. That doesn't really go very well.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fellow tribesman too, but I was more on the Reform side.
Okay, so you were in the semi-safe zone, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that go? That must have been fun. That might have been like a fucking Christmas.
No, I always felt out of sorts because like I I grew up, I was the only Jewish kid in my grade. My parents lived in a town where there wasn't Jews, but the main line of Philadelphia was not that far away. So that's where I went to Hebrew school. So not only did I not fit in at school, whenever I went to Hebrew school, I didn't fit in either. So it was always just one of those things where I was always trying to find my crew. Eventually found them, of course, but yeah, it didn't really bode well either going to Hebrew school and mixing with the Jews. It just didn't. I don't know.
I mean, I feel you. I mean, I I myself, my dad was from Morocco in
hmm
Africa,
hmm
and my mom is third generation European Brooklyn. You know, um, I was like a half breed.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a heavily Ashkenazi and Hasidic and ultra Orthodox community surrounded, and you had to assimilate within your own culture.
Right.
What? And that was a head scratcher for me for a while, and I eventually just got to a point like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. I chose a more spiritual path eventually.
Yeah, same.
Because I felt religion was all man made and therefore it's flawed. So I wasn't going to take it as the end all be all. Although I think certain religions do teach the right lessons. It's just when they go to the extreme side, but I think that's everything.
You have to keep in mind also the intentions within people of those times. When you hold on to tradition, and like the thing is for me, like I consider myself to be a conservative person but
hmm
with a liberal mindset. What
Sure.
I mean by that is that you can be conservative in certain values, for example, like the right for a family, the
hmm
right for a belief of spiritual thinking and open-mindedness towards
hmm
other ideas, but at the same time not lying to yourself about who you are and what you want to be. you
Sure.
know Let me be honest with you. I mean, I grew up in an environment where you have many people that get married, never had any sexual experiences ever in their entire life,
Yeah.
do it the very night that the wedding is going on.
hmm
I don't know about you, but that seems like the ultimate episode of PTSD if somebody hasn't figured out they're gay yet.
Right. Yeah. And plus, like, you don't even know if it's going to be good. You don't even know if this is an adequate partner.
You don't even
You
know if
know?
their penis is like when it's hard is more than 3 inches, bro.
Yeah.
With a
Yeah.
diameter of 1 inch. That's like a fucking
Yeah.
baby carrot.
Yeah. No, I watched a lot of my friends get married in their 20s.
Uh,
And my first thought was, my first question was like, did you fuck enough? Because if you didn't, then chances are you're looking at a divorce or infidelity at some point in time because you didn't, sort your oats a bit.
you didn't align your semen correctly as you were told. Bad
Yeah,
soldier.
yeah.
Bad,
I,
bad, bad soldier.
yeah, like at this point, I've experienced plenty to know that, to know what I like and know that I don't yearn to have it elsewhere.
I think it all comes down to finding what makes you spark. You
hmm
know, the I remember because my brother and sister, they're both religious. And I remember having like the conversation where my brother was literally comparing my sexuality to a drug addict and a person that runs around naked on the
Ah,
streets.
okay. Yeah. All right.
And I eventually like got to a point where I said to him, I said, "Do I ever ask you what you do with your wife in her bedroom?"
hmm
No, of course not. So then why the hell are you asking me about my life and experiences? Is like, well, why are you sleeping with this person? It's like, well, because I want to.
hmm
Don't tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing. Like, think about it. We don't really know if we get more than this life, right? So then live the best life you can, why hold yourself? I have such a hard time of like, why hold yourself back?
Well, that goes back to the whole dogmatic religions and the rigid guidelines that people feel they have to adhere to.
It feels very unfamiliar.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I didn't really walk the traditional path, as you could tell. So, um, my family always looked at me like, "What is he up to now?" But hey, I did well by myself, and I didn't go by the rules. I mean, the worst was during COVID when they're all lining up to get injected, boosted, all that, and I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do it because I don't know what's in it." And they're being a little cagey about all that. And I was the one who couldn't really
Adorable
go.
dog, by the way.
Thank you. One of three. I'm sure they'll pop in at some point. Um,
Please.
but yeah, it was being the, I guess, the black sheep of the family, being the one who went against the grain. I mean, it felt natural for me, but my family was always looking at me like, what's wrong with him? Like, why doesn't he accept a reason? And I'm more of a question everything and come to a rational and sensible conclusion about things.
It's interesting because there was a time, I'm not from the generation, but there was a time where you'd have these parents that give the whole talk to their kids about, the things you're not supposed to do, don't look at dirty magazines, yada, yada. But then you'd find your dad's stash
Yep.
of Playboys, and okay,
Yeah.
hypocrite, like,
Yeah.
what's going on over here?
I fortunately didn't have those conversations about what you're not supposed to do, except for like the basics, like don't smoke cigarettes, which I thought was reasonable.
I think
And,
so.
work
Yeah.
hard in school, do whatever you do in life, do it to the best of your abilities. I mean, these are good things to be taught, which I did apply, but I was encouraged to kind of find my way and figure out what inspired me and motivated me. So, and it wasn't sex. It really wasn't. I just happened to fall into that. It was more just,
But don't
yeah,
you like literally fall into sex? I mean, kind of, right?
uh,
Depending on the
yeah,
situation.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. There was plenty of that going on. I mean, even well before I got into the porn industry, when finally after hitting puberty and my goofiness all came together and congealed into, I guess, somewhat of an attractive form that women were attracted to, then it was okay. Let's make some mistakes and let's learn from these mistakes. And that's really what it was. It was a series of learning experiences over the years.
So, in short terms, a lot of fuck ups.
Of course. I mean, that's how you learn as a human. And then there's a certain point where you can see how things are going to go even before you do them.
Of course.
You're like, there was a time when I had stopped with the relationships and I was like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do, the apps, whether
We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So, with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we?
it's Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or whatever. And I would usually psych myself out before I would even go on a date because I already knew where it was going to go. And even the voice inside me that was like, no, dude, just go. You won't know unless you do it. I would go, and within like 5 nanoseconds, I was like, I'm never going to fuck this girl. Why am I even now? I have to sit across from her, chew my food, be polite, pay for the bill, and then that was a waste of an hour.
It's I don't know. For me, I always have to be myself.
Yeah.
And that means vulgar, abrasive,
Mm,
a little nasty, a little bitchy because I am from New York.
mm.
But I always come from like a place of love. People that know me, like I that's just who I am as a person. And for somebody to be like, well, that is a little too much for me. I'm like, well, I didn't ask you.
Yeah. Oh
So
well.
Oh well.
Oh, well.
Adios.
Yeah.
Bye.
My bad all the way.
And by the way, believe it or not, like I have a terrible time dating because like for some odd reason, like most of the guys that I date, they're fragile. Okay, this is
Oh
the
boy.
word.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're fragile. You know,
Mm.
mommy and daddy takes care of them. You know, mommy and daddy decided that they should go to trade school. You
Mm.
know, they're gonna get a car soon because
Mm.
daddy's getting a raise at their job. Oh my god!
Yeah. This
Like,
entitlement.
ugh.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I don't mean to shit on your generation, but I saw a lot of that. Whereas my generation, the Gen Xers, I mean, we were built tough because it was either get bullied and take shit or fight back. And the world is not a nice place and it's not going to go your way. So you need to develop thick skin or you're not going to survive. And I just saw a lot of coddling in the later generations where a lot of people just it wasn't going their way and they couldn't handle it, and so they cry on social media. Which that whole concept doesn't make sense to me either. So
I can imagine though that working within the porn industry,
mhm.
you have to have a lot of grit and a lot of resilience because I can't imagine like it being easy from start to finish. I mean, obviously everybody's like, "Oh yeah, it's easy. You can make lots of money. Yeah, bro. Like just cocaine all day,
Mhm.
man."
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it isn't easy. People who think it is are very misguided. And for me, I wasn't a performer. I was a producer and a director. I literally went to film school, 6 years of higher education unnecessarily because you don't need all that to do any kind of production. You just have to get yourself on a set and you have
Hmm.
to learn. You just have to be willing to learn. I mean, maybe you could take like an associate's degree and learn the basics of cameras and exposure and all of that stuff. But generally speaking, you don't need to do all
These
that.
these days they have online courses.
Right.
They have places like you don't even. I mean, you could learn photography in 6 months. I know
Sure.
somebody that did that. Like,
Yeah.
it's not hard anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if there's anything, I wouldn't have done all that higher education, even though it was kind of expected of me. That's what you're told when you're Jewish, growing up. Like, you got to do well in school so you can get into
Oh,
a good
God.
college. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to me, it was 4 years of, okay, drinking, having sex, making mistakes, um, learning about shit that I've forgotten most of it, you know? And so where did that get me? No, nowhere. So,
A
but
piece
with
of paper. A piece of paper.
yeah, that is like two pieces of paper actually that
Excuse
are
me.
that
Excuse
are
me.
that
Sorry.
are that are in bubble wrap in my closet. They're not even hanging anywhere. Like who gives a shit? You know what I mean? So yeah, but when it comes to the porn industry, you're right. There people think it is all blowjobs and rainbows, and it isn't. And for me, a guy who was just a producer and a director and running camera, I had to oversee a bunch of shitheads. I had to babysit shitheads. I had to deal with I want to throw out some Yiddish to you because you will get it. All
Of
this
course.
mishigas that they were throwing at me in terms of concepts. I had to make sense of it all. And
Meshuggahs.
yeah,
Meshuggahs.
yeah. It was really just controlling chaos. For a day and multiple days during the week. That was my experience in the porn industry.
It's very much like, the concept of bump and grind,
Hmm.
but the work ethic of it.
Yeah.
It's like we all have to do things to survive.
Hmm.
Plain and simple. The idea of like, well, we don't have fight and flight anymore. We kind of still do.
Hmm.
You know, these days it's just 8 billion people plus technology plus the internet
Yeah.
plus a bunch of things, right? So
Yeah.
it's all being able to navigate. You started working pre-internet or kind of at the beginning?
At the beginning, when the internet was finding its way,
Okay.
and it was right before the explosion, and I got in with the guys who would become Brazzers around 2003, 2004 ish. And they were like young frat bros that knew how to market porn on the internet, which was with pictures. And I was at that point, I had returned to Florida. I don't know what it is, what they put in the water in Florida, but Florida is like a good breeding ground for strumpets who just want to be in porn movies. So, but they weren't very well versed. They weren't the most professional in terms of experience. They weren't the best performers, very amateurish. So they said to me when I was about ready to get out of Florida, because I got battered by hurricanes, like 3 direct hits in 13 months. And I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here. And they were like, well, if you tap into the LA market, we will keep you very busy because we like what you do. So I didn't want to move to LA again because I crashed and burned, and that's how I got into the porn industry. So I set up shop in Las Vegas, which had a lot of advantages to it. And I brought LA to me. And that's how this whole crazy story started in March of 2006, 19 years ago when I got to Vegas. That's coming up on that anniversary.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
went by quick.
It was a completely different world. I mean, I'm 26, and I can tell you, like, there was a time that if you wanted things, you didn't have such an easy access.
Mm-hmm.
I had to ask my parents for a lot of stuff. If I wanted a DVD or rent a game, I had to be like, Mom, can we go to Blockbuster, please?
Blockbuster,
Right?
yeah.
And it was just, access was limited. So the thing is to be somebody that can be able to work at the early stages,
Mhm.
that gives you an incredible advantage.
Certainly, certainly, yeah. And once they started the whole Brazzers thing, and it started to explode. I mean, it also exploded further when they started Pornhub. But I didn't see a slow month for 16 years while being out here in Vegas. The only time it was slow is if someone popped for HIV or when there was the syphilis outbreak in 2012, things along that nature. But overall, I was very busy for a very long time until COVID hit and the business changed and everything about it was changing, but it was perfect timing for me because I was over it, like ready either to overdose on drugs or just have a mental breakdown because just the shit piled on so thickly over the last 4 years before that. It just
You
got
mean,
worse and worse.
you mean financially?
No. Financially, it was still good. Financially is what kept me going. I had what I call the bullshit to dollar ratio, which was they paid me X amount of dollars per scene, and that justified all of the horse shit I had to deal with from the head office to my crew
Oh, I
to
see what you
the
mean. Okay, yeah.
performers. But what was happening was like after the Me Too movement and with the younger generation of performers that were coming in that no longer knew how to communicate, especially when you're dealing with something as fragile as consensual sex on camera. That was a big red flag for me. Whereas people from my generation or before it or even after it, if there was a hard line that was crossed during a scene, you said one of 3 words: cut, stop, no. And if you did that, I knew there was a problem and I knew we had to regroup and stop. But with the younger generation, they weren't talking. They assumed that either we were mind readers or eye readers, or their notion was I'm going to power through the scene because I don't know if I can call cut or if I don't feel comfortable that I can call cut.
Oh my god.
And you would find problems the day after when you thought everything went smoothly. So I didn't know how to navigate that anymore.
It gets extremely frustrating.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring it up because I I've always I had when I was living in Israel, I was kind of around people that were um they knew a lot about European like culture and stuff, like particularly like Italian.
Mhm.
Um I forgot the name. They're called porno films. They're not really like called porno. You know what I'm talking about? And
Yeah.
there's very minimal dialogue, but just the way that the shots that are done, you feel like you're actually watching a movie.
Okay.
But you're watching a story unfold of two people falling in love and then having sex with each other.
Sounds like a script for Digital Playground that I had to shoot for these features, which I hated doing.
But the way that they filmed them were, first off, like, this was done years ago. Like, it was grainy film. Like, you can obviously see, like, the splices and the things that they had to do.
Okay.
But I don't know, it's kind of just like cheesy to just sit there getting pissed drunk with a few people just watching this shit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my view of porn was pretty simple. For straight porn, anyways. Hot girl, hot outfit, solid male performer, solid sex. Be done with it. The concepts when they started dealing with scripts and all that. As long as the script was a couple pages, I didn't really give a shit because I can get through that. But when you have to shoot a feature and you have to deal with, serious acting and an attempt to tell a story, I was like, this is the wrong medium, guys and girls. Like people are here to do one thing, and that is to jerk off. They don't care about your story, so stop it.
I just think, like, Europeans in particular just have, like, a very different, like, look at look at the Germans. If
Yep.
you ever, like, look at German porn, in, like, regards to what's searched, these people are insane.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just their culture, like, they're not out to murder anybody. They just want to be beaten to fucking death.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, I'll tell you this, they're the strongest anal male performers in terms of being able to, like, stay rock hard were the Eastern Europeans,
Of course.
like the Austrians, the Russians. They're the ones that are like, hey, throw whatever at me and I will not falter. And it was true. Yeah.
I have no problem.
Yeah.
I stay hard for hours.
Exactly.
Hours and days. You got
it. You got it. And that was the truth. So, but like, yeah. And I always found that the American performers were soft, from the dudes to the girls, the women, just because they were entitled. And you see an Eastern European woman who's like doing like triple anal and all sorts of extreme stuff, and they're getting paid much less, and they don't complain at all. They're like, yeah, just another day. Whereas you would have a girl from California, it's so cold in this room, or it's so hot in this room. I'm like, yeah, well, you're naked. I'm wearing clothes and I'm dealing with the heat. Like, come on, like, we have a job. This is a job. This is what, when you're saying about work ethic, I had a very strong work ethic, and I think it was how I was brought up. But I would find that the American worker, whether they're performer or not, was very lazy, and they just did the bare minimum. And I thought that was shitty. I hated it. So, but that's what we deal with out here.
It's interesting because it's almost as if, like, the human anatomy has been through evolution, like, has evolved based on the conditions. If you think about Russian women in particular, okay, these ladies have to grow up in frigid cold weathers, deal with Russian men, which, by the way, I love Russian culture. I've been around. Russian men are hard to get along with, all right?
Well, they're very brutally honest. They're very direct.
Correct. And very tough skin.
Yes.
So you as a wife have to deal with this, and then birthing children. You're going to have a pussy honey child that you can take it thick and you won't complain.
Yeah.
And they don't complain. They love it.
I was actually having a conversation with a buddy of mine about this. Like, the generations, our generations, particularly from, late 1800s to 1900s, that came to America, right? They did not have it easy. They had to work their asses off.
Literally.
To get themselves ahead. And even when it came to the gangsters, Jewish gangsters were a big thing in the early. Yeah, really, because see, my thing was between the Italians and the Jews, they were very similar. But what happened was the Jewish gangsters didn't want their kids to be in the family business, so they put them through law school and medical school, and that's why you have a lot of Jewish doctors and all that. Whereas that was the family business when it came to the Italians. I'm curious about you say there's still a Jewish mafia.
Yeah, so it's called Yedidim. and it's
Okay.
run by Satmar. So, this is something bananas, and I had somebody like reveal this to me. It turns out, majority of the strip clubs and gentlemen clubs throughout the entire state of New York is owned and run by this mafia organization. Now, something very interesting you'll notice if you ever go to a strip club or a gentleman's club or anything like that out in New York, you might see some of them coming out of like, the employees only doors,
Mhm.
and they grab the money and start counting, and then they walk back, and you can see a few of them with their tzitzis, sitting there, and they're like, yeah.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
cool. It's good to know. I'm glad it survived, and because I think the reason
Now
why they're
it's
so suc
sex. It's interesting.
well,
Now it's
uh,
sex.
but the reason why they're so successful is
It's-
because they keep a low profile, you know?
yeah,
They're not making a lot of noise, which is brilliant. It's so smart.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. And they not only have the tri-state area, it's the whole state.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
It's
Uh,
kind of like, almost like it's kind of like almost when you think about California almost, right? You have places here in this country where one place speaks for the entire state.
mhm. Right.
Okay. I mean, if you think about California, I mean, it's San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego.
Mhm.
Like, let's be honest, nobody else gives a shit about anywhere else in California.
Right. It's
And it
true.
kind of the same thing applies in like Nevada. Like,
Mhm.
there's Las Vegas, maybe Reno, and
Mhm.
like where they have Burning Man, but
A lot of
like,
shit in between. A lot of nothing in between.
right? So
Yeah.
it's just where I don't know. It's like either you have to pit yourself in the right place or target yourself where it's an obvious hit, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, I'll have to do a little more research on this Jewish mafia because I thought they died with Meyer Lansky.
So I mean, honestly, today, if the way the honestly criminal culture in New York has completely changed.
Mhm.
I mean, these days it's more Russian and Chinese more than
Right.
anything else. But you're still dealing you're still dealing with a place that just like many other states has a lot of crime. We like to I don't want to get political, but like we like to blame Ukraine because they had corrupt government, and they were doing fraudulent things, and yeah, but we have states in this country that do that all the time
Right.
and have been doing this for years,
Yeah.
and nobody's going to say anything because guess what? Somebody's making a paycheck and they're happy.
Yeah.
Don't mess with their paycheck. No, no.
Yeah. No, you're right. You have a point there. Definitely.
It sucks though. You'd think like people would be more compassionate or considerate, but the reality is that if there's a market for something and somebody can make money off of it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and that saddens me in a lot of ways. But I guess the thing that really surprises me is that the amount of money that stupidity makes these days, or what seems to be lack of hard work, or lack of trying, or lack of intelligent thought, seems to be doing very well these days. And
Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say if you've been enjoying the podcast and enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing, someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode.
I think that goes across everything, but mainly with the social media people and the YouTubers.
Well, it's also a way of going back to what we were saying earlier. It's a way of labeling things.
Mm.
The same way that we had the Sweeping Drug Act of the 1970s was complete bullshit. It was just a way of Richard Nixon winning his political election. End of
Mhm.
story. The same idea kind of applies with the sex industry. They quote unquote have never figured out a way of making money off of the industry, so therefore they've kind of made it illegal across. It's bureaucracy at its core.
Yep.
It's like you're expecting to get a meal out of a hungry, starving dog.
Mhm. Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about, the sex industry, the ones that are the most profitable or were, one was the Canadian company that I worked for, and OnlyFans, that's out of the UK. Now these make a lot of money, a lot of money. And an American company couldn't have done as well. That's the crazy part.
No, because again, there's almost this fear factor in this country where anything that's labeled vulgar, sex, drugs is bad,
Yeah.
and you have to put all those things together. You know what? I'm going to say this. It's the same way that, like, we were talking about, like, for example, for me in regards to like the gay community, I don't even want that even part of like the conversation.
Mhm.
That's just who I am as an individual. I'm not a part of any community. I'm a part of my community. Okay? Don't preach on to me. I'm not interested. You have to be able to like find yourself within the ground and like realize that you can't ever expect anything fucking real to come from that. They're
Mhm.
not going to give it to you. They don't want to. They don't
Yeah.
care.
Mhm.
Why should they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
So yeah, so what porn topics have you has piqued your interest coming up to this interview?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, for me, it's mostly gay girls. It is one thing I was I experienced recently was Korean gay porn.
Okay.
So it turns out that these Koreans, they dress up as women.
Okay. So
So it's
like lady boys.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's like extremely popular there. I okay, I'm not gonna lie. Like when I saw the link, I just kept on scrolling, and I may have like just been like browsing for like 15 minutes. Okay, I mean, because like I've never seen this before in my life. It's like, but they got dicks,
Mhm.
but they look like chicks.
Mhm. Yeah, that's like trans porn. You're basically explaining like trans porn right now. It
But
sounds like.
it's just it's just odd because I've never kind of ventured out. I've kind of been exposed to like really weird and interesting things. And I'm like, oh, that exists? Okay.
Mhm.
I found out that there was this was a while back. Oh my god. There was an animation company making porn. And they were making the Simpsons porn. There was a Family Guy porn. There was a Star Wars porn. And they were animated. So this motherfucker like had papers and all that shit and like,
Ah, yeah.
rewind.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that just is beyond my comprehension in terms of what people consume
I
in
like the
porn
weird shit. I don't like to jerk off to the weird shit. I'm saying I like to experience the
or
weird shit.
witness it. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
witness it. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I think that's actually there's something to that because vanilla porn has gone out the window literally decades ago. Where to move the needle these days, you kind of have to have a little bit of a shock value to it or some kind of oddity to it. And that's what moves the needle these days a
Like
little
alien,
bit.
like alien porn. You heard
Yeah.
about it? You heard about alien porn?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the toys that are all like, or are you talking about something else? Like people dress up as aliens in the suits and all that. Is that what you're?
Yeah. They pull out the whole shebang though.
Oh,
Like the purple skin. And like they sometimes like they're adding like I don't know how this is possible. Like they add like food dye to the
to the jizz?
yeah.
Wow. Is that computer
I
added?
I don't know. It's such a I watched like a preview of one of them, but it felt like almost AI and then kind of real and then kind
Mm.
of
Yeah, I mean, look
it's
with
getting
AI now.
funky these days.
Yeah, with AI, you can do virtually anything, so that could be it. Yeah, I was trying to think practically, like, how would I make semen look like a different color?
Right? That's
And
what I
the
was thinking.
and the answer would be a contraption that you use to squirt it out with some coloring. You know, you get something called what was that stuff called? It wasn't called jizz. It was called something else. It was a specific kind of like a product that you would buy that looked like it was called spunk. That was it. Spunk.
Spunk.
So you put spunk in
Not sponsored, by the way.
yeah,
Hopefully.
some sort of apparatus and you add some food coloring and that's how I would do it if we were going back to the old method. But this brings me back to like I shot the first like a Star Wars parody when The Force Awakens was coming out in 2015. And as I was shooting it, I mean, it looked cool, but I was thinking, like, who on earth is going to jerk off to this? Seriously. And the answer, nerds, lots of them, because the ads for that particular shoot broke records at digital playgrounds. And I was sitting there, like, they wanted to have one guy use the force and like clothes come off. And I'm thinking, how the fuck do I do this? So we rigged it with fishing line and Velcro. And that's how we did it. Like, this is all practical. And while it was going down, I'm thinking this is going to be the biggest piece of shit ever. But it wound up breaking records. And that's, I think, the first step when I realized I don't know this business anymore. So I'm just going to just do my best every day and hope that the gig continues.
Oh my God. I mean, it's a tale as old as time, you know, like nerds are money makers because people think like they're the underdogs. Yeah, they're the underdogs, but let me tell you, man, they got the sock, they got the lotion, they know the tissues what they're supposed to use. These motherfuckers are ready to go down and they're ready to go down hard.
Yes. They jerk off a lot, these nerds.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So they are the biggest consumers of porn. But yeah, I mean, even some other things too. Like when I was moving studios, we had so they had sent me like boxes and boxes and boxes of sealed fleshlights, right? That were supposed to
Damn.
be they were supposed to be giveaways for live shows, and they just forgot about them. So when I had to move studios, I had to move all these fleshlights that they forgot about.
How
So I
many
was like,
flashlights did you have?
Hundreds, literally hundreds of
Jesus
different
fucking
kinds.
Christ. Oh my God.
You had performers, you had either their mouth or their butt or their vagina. But then, you know, so what I wound up doing was like, well,
Nice.
money could be made on this. And this was when eBay was still allowing the use, the sale of fleshlights. And I was like, look, if I knock these off 50% of the list price, they're going to sell like hotcakes. And I wasn't wrong. But even the stuff that I was like, okay, what is this? What do we have here? Oh, this is the Frankenstein fleshlight. No one's going to want that. And literally, I would put it up and it would be bought within, I'm not lying, within 5 minutes. You hear the cha-ching and you're like, whoa, Frankenstein vagina just sold. And then there was just like more of them too. Like they had like the cyborg one. And then I was thinking too, like, okay, they had ones for gay people. And I was thinking, okay, so it was called the Fleshlight Jack. And it was like, I mean, it was thin, but it was like two butt cheeks, you know? And what was happening was the transparent ones were selling so quickly. And I'm thinking, why are the transparent ones selling?
Oh
I was like,
God.
oh, so they can see their dick moving in and out of it. Of course. I'm just like, I wasn't thinking like that, but
You were thinking like a gay man for a minute. Oh.
Yeah, that was the whole deal. I was like, okay, so I made like this was when things were getting a little lean for me and the money wasn't as good. So yeah, the fleshlight, my store was called Orifice Max is what it was called,
Nice.
and I made some good money selling those things to at least supplement income.
Oh my God, bro.
Yeah,
You know, like you could, dude, you could be the man that, you know, if you had a grandkid, right? You could like put him on your lap. It could be like, when I was your age, I sold fleshlights on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah, don't think that fleshlight doesn't have value, son, because it does.
these
Someone,
days they can fly in the
yeah,
air.
yeah. But seriously, like that was the eye opener of I really don't know what the fuck is going on in porn anymore. But I'm going to continue on and ride this gig until it's done, and that's exactly what I did.
But you know what? It did. I think every single time we go through like the ups and downs, you know, you like to get stuck in the idea that you're always going to be down. But we always have sometimes bigger ups and sometimes we have smaller ups and sometimes we have big downs and sometimes small downs. Like it just varies throughout our lives. You know, I think focusing on all the times we go down instead of focusing on also all the times we went up, it's kind
Yeah.
of counterintuitive, you know? They
Mhm.
kind of work hand in hand. I'll give you a great example, by the way. In the auto world, we have what's called a digital signal. Okay. And a key frame of a digital signal is up and down.
Okay.
So if you're missing any of those pieces, computer processes it as an error.
Mm, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Did not know that. Did not know that. Yeah, well, look, man, the whole thing with the porn industry still doesn't make any sense to me anymore. I am glad to be done with it because it has just gotten to the point of being nonsensical in a lot of ways.
You know what? I don't think you're alone, to be honest. I think like kind of the same thing has kind of happened even within the cannabis industry.
Hmm.
You know, it's 2025.
Yeah,
You know, you I I would think we would maybe be more advanced as people,
yeah,
but we're just as stupid as we were 15, 20 years ago. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it
Well,
yeah.
you have like half the country. It's always going to come down to half the country. You know, half the country is for, and the other country is against. So here we are, stuck in the quagmire, not being able to go anywhere. But yeah, I mean, I look at it like this: all you have to do is legalize it on the federal level, make banking legal for the people in the cannabis industry, and you will have a taxable moneymaker. But it's just they can't get out of their own way.
Do you think the same type of attitude could be applied to the sex industry, or you don't think so?
Well, the thing I don't really understand is what we were talking about earlier. Well, it's been an industry that's been around forever, okay? And people in my industry, the younger people, use this whole term called mainstream porn, which is porn that is produced outside of OnlyFans. So your studio porn. And I say that's the worst term you could give porn because there's nothing mainstream about it. If there was, then people wouldn't be getting their bank accounts shut down because they're sex workers. They would tax sex work if it was so mainstream, but it isn't. People wouldn't be getting their Instagram and social media accounts shut down if it was so mainstream. So I don't really understand why it is, other than I believe it has to come back to what I had said about religion, you know, and the thought that it's immoral, so we cannot legalize it nor tax it.
It's interesting because, you know, we've lived in a culture like we were talking about COVID, right?
Mhm,
And I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, we had literally 4 years where this country went mad,
mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and I just feel with that type of attitude, yet alone, just look, I hate religion with a diehard passion. Will I walk into a church? Hell yeah.
Mhm.
I like having fun. You know, would I walk into a synagogue? Sure. I don't give a shit. My intention is that don't push your bullshit on me. You
Sure.
know what I'm saying? I'm saying, like, in regards to if you have a country that's already made out of so many fucking people, don't you think it makes a little bit sense to kind of push religion a little bit on the side when it comes to certain things? I mean, there's a lot of things that applies to this too. You know, it's where I understand that we're supposedly a Christian country. We're not really a Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
There's Muslims, Jews,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and you have people Hindu, you have Buddhist, you have Copt. I mean, the list just goes on. You have all sorts of people. Like it's just insane when you're pushing liberal craziness on people, you know, being diverse and inclusive and all the 9 yards. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you're still not fixing the problem here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you found the pushback in the other way. I think in 2020, the pendulum swung where the progressive agenda got a big boost. And what would happen is you would find that a lot of people were rejecting it, not because they're anti anything. They were just fucking tired of hearing about it on every single corner. So that's where the pushback happened. I think most people nowadays, they don't care if someone's gay, trans, whatever. Live your life, be happy, do whatever you want. But don't make me conform to your rules or have to go along with it because I'm doing my own thing. And I think that's really what had happened. And that's why there was such a pushback where people are like, I'm just so fucking tired of hearing about this shit. I'm getting angry and you're forcing me to become somewhat anti on this whole thing because I'm tired of hearing about it. That really was where it all came from.
I I had I had a bit of a booster because I grew up in a closed community, and then coming out of it, you know, my first intentions were, again, this is my experience. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about everybody else's. You know, my experience was with the gay community was being inclusive. But the thing that I started learning more and more is you don't need somebody to hold your hand, you know? You need somebody to be there to allow you to be you,
Mhm.
not make you feel like you need to fit or mold and fucking shape yourself to be something else.
Right.
You know, I think the same thing applies over and over again, whether you want to call it, you know, porn or sex. It's what we do. I mean, people have sex all the time. You know, it's like people don't realize sometimes you need something to help you get it on sometimes too. And it's like, I don't see the problem with that. Like, I'm the type of person, I go to the strip club and I'm just loving how these girls are performing. I'm gay. I'm
Mhm.
just there to see how these fucking girls are performing because I love that shit. You know?
Yeah.
People can have those attitudes and perspectives. Like, I'm not saying to shove this shit on your kids, right? We're not
Right.
saying, like, come on, like, be adults over here. But I guess nobody can be adults about this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's true. It's like, I think with the constant pendulum swinging back and forth, that is in a weird way how you get balance and harmony. Because if one side gets to be too much, then that could lead to, I don't know, the whole world going with sugar in some ways, you know?
Well, look what happened with you talking about swinging the pendulum. You
Mhm.
know, we went from, okay, sex is not good for kids, but
Right.
teaching them about the LGBTQ community is so important.
I know. I know. Yeah. And
Wow.
that's what got people like to the point where before they didn't give a shit. They started giving a shit because it was like you have to have boundaries at some capacity. And I think with kids, it's a very acceptable boundary. Like let kids be kids. Let them figure it out. As an adult, if a kid asks you something, be welcoming and be informative. But shifting and or pushing any kind of agenda on anyone, that's when trouble starts. And that's where some people, I think, you know, when you're younger, you're very impressionable. So who knows whether or not that's the direction you truly want to be in or you're being in to fit in. I mean, I know when I was, a teen, you conform because you want to be accepted, but that's not who you really are.
We want to fit in with the cool kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the ones that are smoking dope in
Right.
the Skylark
Right.
in the parking lot.
Exactly.
Oh my god. No, but you know what? Honestly, I feel so true to that because I mean, when I was starting to figure out for myself, you know, I had, you know, my feminine phase you know. And to be honest, like I'm still figuring it out, but I'm kind of masculine, you know. I like my sneakers. I hang out with the boys and all that bullshit, but it doesn't change who I am. You know,
Mm.
imagine being like a teenager when I was a teenager, and then being confronted with all of that, and then saying, "Well, guess what? You're trans."
Mhm.
I'm not trans.
Yeah.
You see what I'm going over here? It's like I started figuring out things kind of like in my early 20s, and I've been around and I've spoken to even people that are trans. I've spoken to some people I met, like for example, even with lesbians and things. You start to kind of figure out your sexuality kind of in your early 20s, and then
Mhm.
throughout, you know, your 20s and 30s and even your 40s. You
Yeah.
know, you're ever so evolving with that shit, and so misunderstood.
Yeah, well, you're refining yourself over those years. You're figuring out what you are and what you want to be. It's a constant phase of evolution. Really, that's what humanity is. I'm not the same person I was when I was in my 20s or my 30s. You know, you if you're doing the job right as a human, you're trying to get better along the way, and you're trying to be more accepting and more empathic to anything. So I just think it's really a matter of what we went back to is you don't force anything down anyone's throat and just let people get there. Well, you're smiling on that one.
Because I was thinking including a dick.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey!
yeah. You went there. You went there. But
Boy, you put that shit out there, my brain is gonna be like,
yeah,
ah.
that was what I call an alley oop. I bounce it off the glass for you to jam it home.
God, damn, I
Yeah.
can't help it. You know, we all got those inappropriate minds,
Oh
but
yeah, definitely. I do for sure. I still have like the inner butthead. It's like,
yeah.
you said load.
Oh my gosh. Oh god. It's insane, by the way, like just how like sexualized. I mean, I grew up in the early 2000s. So, you know, we had like I had Danny Phantom, Kim Possible, Ed, Ed and Eddie, you know, the group like uh Fairly Odd Parents. A lot of these shows were like extremely inappropriate. But as a kid, I was just like, whoa. Because it's like, what the fuck? Like literally back then, I hate to say this, but like they kind of give kids what they wanted,
Mm,
not what the parents wanted.
okay.
You know, kind of
Yeah.
kids were in control.
Well, I grew up in the 80s, man, where like sometimes you watch some of these movies, you're like, ooh, that is really cringy. Like 16 Candles, for instance, great movie.
Oh,
But you got
oh,
long duck
oh,
dong, you know, and
oh.
you've got the whole switch of the girlfriend. All those things you're just like, whatever. To drive this point home, I asked my girlfriend, she was born in 96, you know. So I was like, have you ever seen the movie Porky's? And she's like, no. I was like, well, how about I try to find it? And I couldn't find it anywhere streaming. So I literally had to hook up my PlayStation and pull out the DVD that I have of it so we could watch Porky's because it has been like eradicated, it seems like, from the internet because it is not appropriate. And there's certain things in there you're like, yeah, that's a bit edgy.
Well, there was that movie with Tom Hanks, um, the one where he's a kid but he becomes an adult.
Big.
Okay,
Go on.
kids back in those days are like, Rick, make sure mom is not by the door, bro. Lock the door. All right.
Mm.
All right. Let's. Oh no! Stop! Stop! Shit! Here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was kids porn.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it was. But, you know, the 80s were that where you're like, oh, yeah, they were getting away with a lot. And there was a reckoning later on where some of these movies are no longer acceptable.
Fuck that bullshit.
I agree with you. I mean, listen, I'm a big advocate of free speech and the First Amendment, obviously. So let people decide what they want and what they don't want.
This is why, like, I get sometimes excited whenever there's an indie film, like, independent films that are being made, and some
Mhm,
of them are actually really, really good. And I there was one. I mean, there was a lot of sexual scenes in there, and I was just like, nice, because like they were able to get away with shit that
mhm.
you just can't get away with. I mean, they're not releasing this in large theaters like this; they're releasing them in like small venues and things. But I love that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I like it when people have balls these days and they push it, because I think a lot of people got castrated over the years in terms of worrying about being canceled, for instance.
You know what? It's fascinating, and I want to pick your brain on this. Think about the 70s for a second,
Mhm,
okay?
mhm,
The amount of sexual movies that existed in that era. Bro,
mhm.
like this was on television, man. Like, how? And you could just go through the fucking list and then just bam, the 80s came around and like you kind of have like that taboo, like that scene or that like but just like in a blink of an eye, it went from like sexual movies for 10 years to just
Mhm.
complete the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, the trends shifted as they always do. Um, but yeah, I mean, the part of the reason why with my book, I could have gone through traditional publishing, but I felt like if I had, I would have been castrated in terms of content, especially a book about porn and the porn industry, because there are certain things I felt like I had to reveal about the industry, and you can't do that unless you are very graphic in the terms and in what you choose to reveal. So it was really that was bolstered by the fact that cancel culture was running rampant through 2019, 2020, 2021. That's when this whole book was starting to really come together, and I didn't want it to be a product of that, because you can't have a sanitized book about porn and the porn industry.
Again, like that's why I feel we were able to get to a point where we were comfortable with sex
Mhm.
over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, you wonder to yourself, well, like, what happened? Like, something happened that caused that tipping point for that to be reversed. Because my uncle was even telling me, and, like, he's kind of a religious man, he's in his 60s. He was telling me, like, how he remembers in the 70s and how, like, being a little flamboyant was fun. It was just a great way to express yourself.
Mhm.
He's a straight man,
Yep.
raised Orthodox, religious in the 9 yards. Dude, I don't know. There's something like to your point. What I'm trying to get to is people can have differing opinions to things in a positive way.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I don't know if we could ever get back to that.
Well, I wonder really what the younger generation, how they learn about things sexually. And my worry is they use porn as like guidelines and a script and the way you do things, because that's not really the appropriate way to do things when you're dealing with regular situations. What I was shooting all the time was fantasy and playing on fantasy. And I was very clear about that all the way through. Whereas if people are using the watching Pornhub, say they're watching Pornhub, do they think that giving a facial is like the way you end it? Always? Like, I'm genuinely curious, because that's a discussion before you do that.
Honestly, that has been my personal experience has been kind of a ruin for a lot of gay men, particularly around my age,
Okay.
because a lot of them are so used to gay porn, they don't know, they just don't know how to do things. And I've run into this
Interesting.
a few times. It's just like, Have we really
Where
gotten? Have we
yeah.
really gotten to this point?
Yeah, like what movie did you see that from? No, I get it, but I mean, I guess that makes sense. But I mean, this is relevant to what I'm asking, because if that is what gay men are watching in order to get educated, then I worry a lot about it. Now, I was offered to shoot gay porn when I was really needing the money back in, say, 2004 ish, and I
Emphasis on desperately needing the money.
right,
Period.
right. But at the time, but I was also working on a lot of just boy girl stuff, straight stuff, all of that. But they asked me, we can keep you pretty busy and we can pay you a good amount of money. And I turned it down, not because of any other reason, but it was like, I'm not a gay man. So I don't know what gay men want to see in their porn. Like it would be, it really came down to, if I'm going to take money for a job, I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability. And if I'm flying blind here, I'm doing that person a disservice. And that was really the answer.
Yeah, you remember like when we first got on, I've run into this even with my own classmates. Where I've had to be able to like explain metaphorically like ideas sexually to them because but I can understand things about men that they can't like for example, like, oh, like is it just all sexual? I'm like, no, a lot of the times it's not all sexual. Sometimes it's just the physical feel and touch and presence. And believe it or not, that is sometimes fuel people need to see or hear
Mhm.
for them to be able to get into, their mode or their like chakra, whatever you want to call it. Um and you're like it's really true, like a lesbian woman is really going to understand what a lesbian woman is going to want. A gay man is going to understand what gay men are going to want more than if you mix it around. And I honestly like that is just how production is made. When you look at production like through the charts, is you have people that are able to do what they're able to do because of who they are as a person sexually. Think about it, right? Like dates you've gone out, people you've hung out with, people that you've slept with, relationships that you've had with people. That stuff sticks with you.
Yeah.
Creative
Yeah.
fuel right there.
Hmm. Yeah. Agreed. Or, well, for us, when it came to shooting scenes, it was basically following whatever trends or whatever requests were happening through Pornhub. That was like how a lot of our marching orders came, was they were basing things on what was the hot trend on Pornhub. So that's why we were shooting squirting scenes for a certain amount of time. And that's when it shifted to stepbrother, stepsister, stepmother,
Oh,
stepfather,
nice.
all that shit. Yeah, because it was all based on what was hot at the moment. And then, trans porn became pretty popular. I wasn't shooting any of that because it was a hard no for Brazzers before the pandemic on incorporating trans porn into anything.
Oh my god.
Um, but eventually they did. They shot some trans scenes for Brazzers because it was like, this is the times now. Now I had been gone by then. I had already left the company, but I did shoot for OnlyFans a few trans performers, and I was lost, man. I was completely lost because here was the thing. When I shot, we called it always boy girl porn, even though it's misnomer, man woman porn, whatever. I always hired a strong, strapping man to have sex with the woman, because really at the end of the day, with the positions that were being requested, sometimes these standing cowgirls, or even just the reality of moving camera, you're in missionary, the performer, now the male performer is moving the performer, the female performer, so I could see penetration. And that was really why I did it all. Now, when I was dealing with the trans performers, they didn't have the upper body strength that these men that I was hiring for the straight porn was doing. So, to be honest with you, it was like watching two monkeys trying to fuck a football. And I was like, I'm completely lost here. This reaffirms my whole notion of I shouldn't be shooting gay porn because I have no idea what the fuck is going on. It was the same thing with the trans porn. So I
It's like, you're like that little fucking frog, that's like on the fucking branch, and you're like looking up at this person that's just staring with you like a magnifying glass, and you're just like, whoa,
yeah.
and they just like stand fucking still, like you're literally a frog out of water, bro.
Yeah, that's what it was. And, I had done it because I was taking one for the team, literally I was shooting for a company that was managing a bunch of OnlyFans performers, and they had a lot of trans performers. And I told them in the beginning, I was like, I don't think I'm your guy for this. I really don't. And they're like, well, we have a lot of, trans performers. We're going to need you to do it. So, in an effort to show some solidarity, I was like, fine, fuck it, whatever. And, I think there was 3 of them that I shot. And to me, it was all crap because it wasn't up to my bar of specs. But after the 3rd one, I was like, I can't do this anymore because this is just it. I'm lost. I'm literally lost here. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah. Can I get a Xanax, please? Two
Yeah.
Xanax, please.
That's when you go home, you have a nice stiff double, drink it down. You're like, I'm just going to forget about that day and move on.
Yeah,
But
no ice. No ice.
yeah,
No ice
yeah,
and no
yeah.
glass.
Yeah. But that was how it was. Like, and that's where it was getting to the point where I think it's time for me to hang it up. There was the notion that maybe I was being put into porn pasture because I was aging out, because I didn't really understand the new crop and what was going on. And that was fine. Like going the way of the pornosaurus was fine. I accepted it. I became at peace with it. I might have not have been happy with how it all went down, but looking back at it, 5 years removed now, pretty much, and I was thinking this really happened the best way possible, and I landed alive, which a lot of people in the porn industry, a good handful of them, didn't survive. I talk about them in my book, and I was recapping their deaths and I was reading their obituaries, and it became abundantly clear that there was so much darkness going on around me. And I was absorbing that, which was why I was self medicating all the time. That's why I was drinking more or doing more Coke, just because I didn't want to feel their pain because I was feeling it. And I would have been a victim of it as well if it continued.
You sometimes feel almost this weight on your shoulders, this feeling of responsibility that you have to care for. You
Mhm.
know, it's hard when you lose people that you love and you care about. It sometimes feels like, hey, like I didn't get enough time.
Yeah.
Like I but you know what happens, you know what you have to deal with, and you know what they would want for you.
Mhm.
They wouldn't want you to be burying yourself. They would want you to better yourself and
Yeah.
continue on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really what was going down, and I'm grateful that I made it out because the bodies are still piling up in porn, although it seems to have tapered off a little bit. Um, Not this year, last year started off bad. You had Jessie Jane overdosing next to her boyfriend in Oklahoma. You had Cagney Lynn Carter, who I knew, who blew her head off with a shotgun, and that set me off to the industry because the problem was how the industry was handling it. They would have an article in AVN, and everyone from the porn industry would make it about them and talk about how great that performer was and how their experience with that performer was, instead of being like acknowledging how much pain they were in, that they were medicating themselves or felt that there was no other option other than to eat the other end of a shotgun, you know? And that to me was the more proper way of dealing with it. But that's the porn industry in general, which is why I just make fun of it all, because they kind of sweep all of the negativity under the rug instead of really dealing with it. They celebrate each other. They I guess this isn't bad. They boost each other up, but it's all horseshit. It's all like nonsense. Like I look at the porn industry, I'm like, it really needs to be burnt to the ground and rebuilt, and it can be rebuilt better. But they don't want to acknowledge a lot of this. I guess because it's bad for business.
I mean, also, the elephant in the room, which is particularly child pornography
Mm-hmm.
and pedophilia that is amongst this is bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fact that this is going on in this country, the fact that
Mm-hmm.
there are kids that are being abducted, that there's organizations that are doing these things, and like, hello, like, is nobody gonna say something?
Yeah, well, it's getting louder. Those war drums are getting louder for sure. Um, the truth is that Pornhub was inundated with that content, and they were structured and built that way to allow it to be on Pornhub. There's a whole book on it. I'll show it to you right now. It's called Takedown. I know this author. I talked with her because I was wondering right off the bat, is this person a right-wing religious nut that hates porn? And I needed to know. And I reached out to her and we talked for a while. And no, she is just anti-trafficking, anti-abuse, which I think are very noble traits to have. So she took on Pornhub and got them exposed. And literally, the shit hit the fan with them months after I was done with the company. And it just gotten more and more to the point where Pornhub is becoming less and less relevant, and people are becoming more aware of what they allowed to happen on their platform for so many years. So I think there is a pushback happening, and a big light is being shined on it. Now, whether the client list of the Epstein files is released, they're talking about it, but I
It's
hear
not
this.
even it's not even Epstein anymore. It's Diddy,
Sure, sure, yeah,
and the
yeah,
next one is Jay-Z.
yeah.
Like, it's just around the corner. And I mean, they're going after each one,
Mhm.
one by one.
It's great. Yeah, I mean, the thing is that you would think that most people seem to have had a wake up call during the Me Too movement. You know, when social media and everything was so strong that people could speak up and the truth would be like a wildfire that would spread everywhere.
Mm-mm.
But to hear that these stories continued on makes you realize that it is happening at such a high level of money and power that it is scary. And I want to hear about all of this shit, and I want these motherfuckers taken down. I do.
It, something, look, I'm one of those people that in many ways we now have people representing within our own government that represent the people. And I'm not saying that you should rely on these people for every little thing. No, you should rely on the things that you have to take care of and be resilient and be able to survive, obviously. But
Yeah.
that should give you a clue, okay? You know, I have one of my classmates that was a veteran. He was in the Marines, and I was talking to him about how there's a live video of watching Tulsi Gabbard getting disrespected as a veteran.
Hmm.
It's like we have belittled ourselves so much to the point that we're okay with not exposing the truth, being disrespectful towards veterans that's fought for this country, and being disrespectful to people that have a voice and are speaking out their truths. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. It's a machine of misinformation and uh, basically just trying to discredit anyone who does speak out. I mean, that is a big industrial complex in a lot of ways.
1984.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
1984.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are worried about the future. I'm having some optimism
Yeah,
because I'm seeing what's happening, and I'm
yeah.
seeing that it seems like the people are getting their power back, at least in some capacity. So I hope that continues, and that the power elite get burnt to the ground. That's my porn right there.
Hey, I mean, if somebody's got a little bit of fingers and they know how to make AI, you know
Mhm.
what? They might be able to make something,
Yeah,
with the whole like
yeah,
and the
yeah.
and the
Uh,
and the
well, that's AI is where porn is going, anyways. We all know it's happening. I look at it like this: if I'm a company that has to deal with the expense of production, that has to deal with the emotional unwellness a lot of performers, and the liability that comes with that, as well as, I mean, I knew my crew members and I knew all the shit that I had to deal with. Imagine just eliminating all of that if you're a company and just create it in a computer. It's a hell of a lot easier. Now, you're going to have people who are going to want to be watching actual performers. I call those the organics. But then you're going to have the digitals that aren't going to give a shit, that are going to be okay with having digital girlfriends. That is an AI computer. And that is where we're
wow,
headed.
the
Yeah.
organics and the digitals.
hmm I fully believe it. If people have asked me, like, do you still want to be in the business? I don't, for a lot of reasons. But if I were to be, it would to be working for an AI company, helping them develop their AI porn, because that is where this is all going to be going.
It's all about shifting perspective. It's all about, what we go through things in our lives and we gain those experiences to help us go a different path.
hmm
And you know what? It doesn't necessarily like erase everything that you have done and all the things that you've learned, but it has allowed you to be now a better person than you ever have been before because you've seen it firsthand. You've experienced it firsthand. 16 years is not a walk around the backyard. I mean, it's a long walk around the backyard.
Yeah, I mean, that was when it was busy. I mean, we're talking 20, 22 years almost with
Yeah.
all of it. And yeah, you're right. It is, the whole point of all of this is to be better. So hopefully that is what people are doing and going along the way. I get disheartened sometimes because you see the sheer stupidity and the disrespect and the lack of common courtesy that seems to be proliferating all throughout society. But there are good ones out there that want to do good and that want to be good humans and that want to have their interactions with other humans to be positive and favorable.
Indeed. And I mean, again, it's finding out what sparks you, and if you want to speak out, speak out. Again, like the whole purpose of this whole podcast is I don't give a flying fuck.
Yeah.
I don't
Good.
care, and it's like, time be it. Like, if you're upset about something or you don't like something, fucking say it. Who cares? I'm just get out of your head, man.
Yeah. Well,
Let's listen.
that's the purpose of Vic Lagina these days, is just to make fun of the porn industry and call out the nonsense, because there's so much of it in the industry. In an industry where literally is full of like the rejects of the world that made wrong turns and got themselves in situations where porn made the most sense, and I'm included in that. The fact that so many take themselves seriously and have such egos about it, that's what I have to zero in on when I make fun of it, because you do realize you're a dick sucker, right? Like stop with your nonsense and stop with your beliefs that you're doing something that is special, because you're not. None of us are. Maybe those trying to send people to Mars, they're doing something special. But beyond that, no. Stop
Maybe,
it, porn industry.
maybe they're fucking on Mars. I want to get those NASA clips, on the ISS. I mean, like,
Yeah,
damn.
who's the first person that had sex in outer space? That's what I want to know.
Everybody.
You think so, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, when you're out in space for so many months, I mean, your dick gets probably hard in the suit, and you're like, I mean, I have to make sure it fits, and I'm on camera, and like, come on, can you like give me a hand, please?
I did read something interesting because I don't know how this found its way to me, probably the algorithm. But apparently, if you ejaculate into space in zero gravity, you get propelled backwards from the from the explosion of the ejaculate. You move backwards.
Imagine what aliens would be looking like if they see humans going zero gravity and they're like, damn, is this how these people fly? Is they do
Right.
the
And then you have to watch yourself for like floating globs of jizz like everywhere. You have to avoid it.
Like imagine the aliens just being like, ooh, interesting specimen.
Yeah.
Oh. Vic, I know you mentioned you have a book. Do you have a website or any social media links?
I do. If you go to viclagina.com, that's where you can find virtually everything you need about the book. There's a trailer there too, whereas if you're a fan or an enthusiast of porn star boobies, the trailer is full of them. But it's basically a trailer for the book that I had shot with
boobies.
Yeah, well, with porn stars and James Duval. Do you know who that is? He's an actor. He was in like the Doom Generation, Donnie Darko.
You lost me at boobies.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Well, he's in the trailer as well. But if you want to get the audiobook, I recorded it myself.
Oh, nice.
Over a 40-day period. And it's
hella
fun.
Jewish, by the way, bruh. Like if you did it in April, bruh. Like imagine like it's Passover and you'd be like 40 days.
I didn't really think of it that way, but it wasn't. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, you can find everything on viclagina.com, and if you want to tweet or whatever, X and Instagram, I am at viclagina.
Remember about the boobies in the trailer. So, Vic, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. David out there, if you want to check out more podcast, you can find us everywhere at Lost in the Roof Pod. So with that, motherfuckers, peace out.